engagement builder solution. So I'll guide through, what that process looks like, actually creating that form, going through the setup tab, using the toolbox, all of those components. We won't deep dive into certain functionalities of building forms like calculations and things like that, but this will be a little more high level on what it takes to build those forms. Stepping through here. Just as a reminder, especially for anyone new, the cadence of these sessions are the first and third Tuesday of every month. On the first Tuesday, such as today, we go through a feature deep dive focused on specific tools and functionality of the Engagement Builder solution. And then on the third Tuesday, we have an open Q&A. As well, today we will be having an open Q&A as well. Once we're done with the feature deep dive, if there's any questions or anything anyone wants assistance with, we can go through those as well. Today's agenda, fairly straightforward, welcome and recap, which we've already gone through, live session roadmap we'll talk about here in a little while. I'll be talking through all of the various components of building a form, and provide some additional resources as well as that Q&A. Today, kind of the items we'll be focused on just for getting started with creating your forms, creating a new submittable form. We'll do the building the form through the toolbox, working with various types of regions, working with pages, navigation, all of that fun stuff. Then we'll look at the form setup. So set up an introduction pages that can be added to forms. We'll go through cloning and talking about versioning a little bit to clear up some confusion I know some individuals have on that, as well as what it takes to be able to edit forms permission-wise, setting up those users. And then finally, some publishing items, so saving, testing, publishing, and then we'll talk briefly on add-ins, though I know we have a dedicated session in the future focused on that. So I think without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started here. So as an admin user, for the purposes of this demonstration, I'll be using this County of Demo example instance that I have. I'm already logged in here at the top right, so I'll click on my name, and then from the drop-down, I will choose Admin Dashboard. Once I'm taken into the admin dashboard, there's of course a variety of different items that I can, or tabs that I can access here. One of those will include the Sites tab that is available both on the left side of the screen or directly here within the home page of that dashboard. Go ahead and use the left tab over here. And then here I can see all of the different sites, folders, etc. that I have access to. So I'll go ahead and I want to add a new engagement to the clerk and recorder's office. I'll click on all engagements under here. I can see everything that I already have created or have access to here. And then on the top right, I can go ahead and click new engagement and get a new setup. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and for the purposes of this demonstration, create a contact us form. So that a member of the public, a citizen, can go and provide as much information as needed for us to return back to them whatever they're requesting from us. I'm going to go ahead and enter the name of the form or the name of the engagement right here at the top, and then I'm going to select the type. For the purposes of this, we're going to focus on submittable forms, but there are a variety of different other types here, different content types, ways to link PDFs and external web pages. And then we, of course, have the more advanced workflow option as well that would allow us to add in review stages and things like that we'll talk about in a future session. So here within the description, I'm going to say contact the County of Demo regarding any inquiry you have. This will be presented to that public user as well. When they're navigating through the directory, anything like that, they'll be able to see that description. Type is required, of course. I need to select that submittable form and then go ahead and press create. Once I create that engagement, it will first take me into the setup tab here. So this is where I would be able to modify the name of the engagement here at the top. Display label, we actually had a question on this. I can't remember if it was last session or the session before. This is potentially a way that you can leverage calculations to make it very clear to the user what draft that they've created within the My Forms section. So you can append data or information that they've provided to it within that display. I'm sure we'll go through that more in depth at a later session, or if anyone has any questions regarding that functionality, we could definitely answer that during the Q&A session. Description I already referred to here. It will show both within the directory and within search results. The type right here, I've selected submittable form, but if at a later point, I need to upgrade that to a workflow to get those additional advanced capabilities, I can always do that here within the setup tab. So if you always set something up as a submittable form, but then later are afraid, oh, I need to change that to a workflow, I'm going to have to completely recreate this, you actually won't. You can actually just upgrade that at any point in time. The name and URL here is a way to pretty up the URL. So it essentially provides a URL alias or something at the end that makes it a little more pretty for that end user to see. Otherwise, it will be a long string of digits and letters that will be appended to the end of the URL. So if I, for example, were to save this form right here, if I were to grab the test URL as an example, do you see how here it has this long string of letters and numbers right here? That is what we would actually look at cleaning up if we were to provide a URL alias. So if I wanted to simply replace that with contact-us, I can enter that text in right there and clean that up and not provide that confusing, string within that URL. One thing I also like to point out here down below as well is emails to notify on error. If an admin user from your organization wants to be notified whenever a user is having an issue with the submission, definitely add an email address or a list of email addresses here within this section. That way, if a user has trouble completing payment or something happened where it's not inserting data into the data source or anything that may have happened to interrupt that submission flow, you will immediately be notified of that and can help correct that issue. So instead of that user directly having to reach out to you and report that that issue has occurred, this is just a way to go ahead and notify it automatically. I think everything else here is good. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the introduction tab here. The introduction tab is an optional feature where you can. Yeah, Beth, did you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, please. So on the can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. On the error portion of it, will the admin get notified or not?
Yes. So this is where you would place that admin email to receive that notification. It actually would not even go to the individual that made the submission. They wouldn't see any of that. This would be strictly for admin users. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Good question. If you already have potentially received some of the error notifications, some of the people on this call may have for prior ones, Engagement Builder does try to identify editors of the form to try to make it easier so that they're automatically notified. But this is a way to explicitly state this is who those emails should go to if if a error occurred with a submission flow. The introduction is an optional feature that can be enabled on any one of your forms. So you do that directly here within the introduction tab, and you can enable or disable show the introduction. This would just be a page that shows before the actual form and form fields that explains what the form is about, maybe expectations of who can complete it, anything like that. So maybe for my form, I would say this form can be used by County of Demo residents to contact the county with any questions or concerns. We'll do our best to get back to you in 2 to 3 business days. So maybe we want to set up expectations and exactly what that looks like. I could also add a qualifying question down here below. So this is making sure that a user is eligible to complete this. Wouldn't necessarily be beneficial for the use case that I have, but typically, a use case that I would show is, are you a resident of Colorado? And the answer would be yes or no. Maybe I only want Colorado residents filling out this form. So if they select no, I want to make this disqualifying and say you must be a Colorado resident to complete this form. And then that way it immediately shows them something that they have to complete. And if they don't meet the qualifying criteria, they're not able to continue with the rest of that. There is also an option here within the introduction tab to require a user to log in to complete the form. This could be beneficial if you want to validate that they're real users that have access to the email address that they're providing or that they're using as a part of the submission process. Additionally, if you're trying to associate information between them and information that may be contained within a data source, that could be a very beneficial way to do that. Require the user to log in, and then any actions that they take under that user account, map that to a data source, and then retrieve that information for later if they're already using that. We have a couple of agencies that use functionality like that to try to remember user activity or user data. We also have some options here with linking to external web pages or making a PDF available for download within that initial page as well. So if I wanted to provide, a link to the county website as an example directly on that introduction page, there'd be a button at the bottom that the user can select from. I'm going to go ahead and remove my qualifying questions for now, just because it doesn't make sense for this particular use case with this form that I'm working on. But I'm going to go ahead and leave the content within that introduction there. Yeah, Beth, go ahead.
Sorry, I love your sessions. Okay, so under it says answer is disqualifying. What did that button mean under the qualifying question?
Yeah, so that means if a user selects that option, it will provide an error message and not allow them to continue filling out the form. So it'll stop them right on the introduction page, say you do not meet the qualifying criteria for this, and then the user won't even have a start form button nor a way to proceed to the next page.
Okay, so I put in my question, if the answer is yes, then they can go on. And then if I turn on the answer is disqualifying,
Exactly.
If they said no, they stop.
Exactly that. Yep.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Perfect, of course. Cool, that's the introduction section. Going ahead and moving on to the form section here. On the left side here within the toolbox, we have a variety of elements that we can choose from and place into our form. The most basic of those is going to be a text box here, which I can just go ahead and drag from the left section here, that toolbox, and drag into the middle section here, which is known as the canvas. With this, I can go ahead and enter a name field. So I want to collect who's this individual that's requesting us to contact them or is trying to contact us. We could put their name listed right here. If I left click on the fields that I'm editing right here, on the right side, we have this properties panel that lets me customize everything about this field. So here I can set whether or not that question is required. I can set what is the layout type of it. I could do single line or a multi-line there as an example. So if I wanted a bigger text area. And then here I can set the data type as well. This allows me to validate that they are entering data in the exact format that I expect. For this use case for a name field, we want to leave it very open-ended. So we're very likely not going to use this data type. But if it was something like a currency that we're requesting from the user or anything like that, we have a variety of different data type options that we can select from here. And if they don't meet that data type criteria, it fully will provide them with a validation error and prevent them from submitting. Stepping through here, there are some other options as well, such as help text. If we wanted to explain to the user what this field is, how it needs to be completed, anything like this, it would show a little eye icon next to that field and then provide information that's there within the help text. I can also set a default value if I wanted to automatically pre-populate something into that field. I can also include a placeholder. So if I wanted to have a little bit of ghost text with something like a John Doe, I could have that visible for the user, but they're still able to select it and enter the text that they actually want to enter into that input. Scrolling down through as well, we do have some other data formatting and data validation options. We can set the minimum and maximum length of a string of characters that the user can actually enter. We can also provide an input mask. So this will fully prevent the user from entering specific characters into their keyboard, into that field, based on how the input mask has been set up. If you actually click on the little only allow the user to enter specific characters, there's this little question mark that appears. You will see exactly how you set that up. You can set which A to Z is mandatory, which digits are mandatory, which are optional, things of that nature, to collect the exact format that you're wanting from those users. We can also set how that data is masked when we view it on the submission side. So if we want to omit some aspects of the data that's being submitted over, we can also provide an output mask there. If we want to automatically append a prefix or a suffix to what they're already entering into that input field, we can also append that there automatically. Then there's also some advanced validation that we can do down here as well below. These use something called regular expressions, which you may or may not be familiar with. They are a very specific format of how you check against input that has been provided and make sure that it matches correctly how you set up your criteria. There's a whole plethora of resources online about regular expressions, but if you're ever looking for data to be in a very, very particular format, only allow specific characters, only allow a specific number of digits, anything like that, this is something that you can especially look at to just go ahead and enter those regular expressions and automatically get that validation matching against what they're entering. And then down below are some more advanced options, which are really more so meant for kind of API capabilities. I want to go ahead and start to populate more fields within my contact us form. So I'm going to do name, address. For my email address, I can go ahead and set the data type as an email within the properties on the right side. That's going to make sure that it takes in the information in some text at something.com, .net, .gov, whatever that may be. I can also go ahead and add things like placeholders to this as well. So example at .com. And then maybe I want to allow the user to select from a radio group a list of options, what their inquiry is about. What is your, what are acting demo county about? And let's say payment, let's say a record, let's say other. And then if they select other, maybe we want a please specify other. To do that, we could have something like here. We could use something called a conditional region to only make fields visible if a certain criteria or set of options is chosen. So if I drag this into my form, go ahead, specify other here, and then I only want this to appear if other is selected. So what I do here is I just dragged, and I know I did that really quickly, but I dragged the text box into the conditional region. So what you'll see here is I've got one box right here that is my text box. And outside of that, I have a completely separate one that is the conditional region. This is a mistake that we often see people make, is getting very, very confused about how items stack on top of each other. This is especially the case when you start to work with regions and start to layer those on top of each other. Because I could even stack regions on top of this as well if I wanted to. I can have a region and a region and a region. Always make sure that when you're looking at this, you see how many boxes pertain here, and then the label for what that box is actually for will be shown at the bottom right of that section. And then for the exact elements that I want to drag around, I just drag the parent, the topmost level of what I want to drag it to the exact part of the screen that I want it to go. Here, I want this to only show if other is selected. So I'm going to do the basic element matcher, where I can select an element that I'm matching against, about what are you contacting Demo County about, and then on the right side here under value, only make this section appear if other is selected or other is chosen as the option for that input. Now I want to go ahead and have a please specify your request. And so this is going to be an open-ended multi-line field where the user can enter exactly what their request is regarding. Now, I'm also going to have an optional file upload field that allows the user to upload any files that might be pertinent. So, files, for file upload fields, I can restrict exactly what is able to be uploaded. So if I only want it to be PDFs as an example, I can restrict that within the accepted file extensions. For this one, I'm also going to go ahead and not make it required because I'm not expecting a file to be provided with every contact us that is sent over. And then here within the max permitted file size, I can restrict what size of files we're allowed that are allowed to be accepted. So if I want to restrict it to 40 megabytes as an example, I can go ahead and increase that limit. System-wide for your instance, there is a 40 megabyte limit per file upload field. That is a restriction per file upload field and not total across the board. So just keep that in mind. The system will not allow you to go beyond that limit. Perfect. That is it here for the contact us. There is a whole plethora of options that I didn't have time to go through here as well. Those include the drop-down. That is multiple options are provided to the user. User selects from a drop-down and selects one of those. If I go ahead and drag that into my form here, I could set the list type as a variety of different options. The first and foremost is custom. So I want to just manually insert which options are available within this drop-down. I can go ahead and within the properties on the right side, go to items, enter the label and value for each one of those options that's available. Additionally, I can start to populate in information from stock sets that we have. This includes a list of Colorado counties if you want to automatically make those available. And also we can populate information from data sources to automatically make a list of those options available as well. Similar check group, radio group. With radio group we already talked about. Check group is going to allow you to select multiple options at one time, but very similar setup to the drop down that we just walked through. Address is going to have a specific address line 1, address line 2, city, state, and zip. File upload we already walked through. There's also calculations that we can add into our forms as well. I won't be able to go through this today during today's session, but we do have an upcoming session regarding calculations that we'll walk through this on. Validations are a way to use calculations to make sure that a user enters data in the correct format or the correct criteria has been met, or a user will not be able to submit to that form. Content allows us to just include static text within the form itself that maybe explains part of the section that is being completed and like that. So I could say, thank you for visiting our contact us form. I could place that directly on the top or provide explanatory information or anything like that. Element display is going to allow the user to see information that's already been entered into a previous element or previous form field. Then we have a variety of region options. We have just a region where we can just group elements together. You're more likely to use the region with title, where we group elements together but provide a common title between those elements. We have a repeatable region where a user can add multiple items, or we repeat a group of fields a variable number of times. For this, you would just drag all of your elements into the repeatable region here. You can set a minimum and a maximum number of that group that needs to be filled out, customize the add button text, and all of that. So this allows, especially for file upload fields, this would be great. Because we could add a file upload field directly to this. And then the user can now upload multiple files rather than just uploading a single file. We also have conditional regions, which we have already walked through. Data tables allow us to display information from data sources. We can even filter that data from data sources directly onto the form itself. And then date period allows us to select a range of time. So this is going to be like a quarter, a specific month, a specific year, things like that. You, of course, do have the ability for text boxes and drop downs to also support some date options. This is just an out-of-the-box being able to select a range of dates. One other thing that I want to show you as well is pagination when building your forms. So if I want to add additional pages here, I can just click the plus button here at the top. Now I can have a page 2. Maybe the first page I want to have just for the contact information. And this is for the inquiry. I can name those pages here on the top, and those will be reflected in exactly what the user sees. And then here, if I want to drag any of the elements from one page to another, I can use the little drag icon on the left side of that element and drag it up into the correct page that it needs to go to. Whenever I drag that into that page, it will put it directly at the top here. And then I can reorder exactly as needed. I'm going to go ahead and move all of these to the second page. And perfect. So now I have 2 different pages that the user can interact with, which will split it up a little better. Once I'm ready to go ahead and save that change, I'm going to press save at the top right of my screen here, and I can enter a description of the changes that I've made. So I'll just put created contact us form, because this is the first change that I've made to this. I'm going to go ahead and save that there. Every time I press save, it's going to contribute to the test mode within Engagement Builder. We'll also see within the history tab at the bottom left of the screen, every single draft or save that has occurred as a part of me editing this form. I can revert back to a previous version if needed, so that's very much the benefit of this, is that I can see exactly what changes been made at what point in time, and if something is currently wrong with the form, but I know that I've worked on such and such date, I can go ahead and revert that back using this little back arrow right here. If I want to go ahead and test those changes, I can click test URL here at the top, go ahead and open that in a new tab, and this will provide me a full environment in which I can go through the entire submission flow and make sure that the engagement works exactly as expected. We'll see here that I have the introduction page that I created previously. Go ahead and start the form. Now I have the 2 fields here on the top that the user can enter for name and email. You'll see it is expecting it in that format, an email address. So that automatically set up the validation criteria for this. And then the inquiry here, if I were to select other, now we've got that conditional component as well. I've also got the repeatable region where I can add multiple file upload fields because I put that file upload directly within that repeatable region. Perfect. Moving back. Once I am ready to publish these changes and make them publicly available, that's where I would click the Publish tab on the left side of the screen. This will say this engagement has never been published as an example, or it may say that there are unpublished changes. I can click on the details dropdown here on the right side and see exactly what revisions have occurred since I last published, or in this case, since I've never published, I can see every single change that has been made. And then here I have options to include it in the directory tab on our Access.gov site homepage. I also will be required to supply at least one tag within this section. So here I might just put contact. This can be a little confusing at first. I will need to enter exactly what I want my tag to be, the full text of it, and then click the little drop down here to go ahead and apply that tag. That will make sure that I have at least one tag supplied and they can proceed through the rest of this. Visibility, I want to go ahead and set as online here, but if you were to later unpublish this, want to take it offline, you could use the offline option or only have it available during a certain window. I could use the scheduling option as well. I'm going to go ahead and press OK and publish that change. And now it is available here at the public URL that I can grab from the drop down here, open that in a tab, and then visit that. You'll also see that that URL was prettied up a little bit here at the top. So it has contact dash us instead of the long string of digits and letters. Perfect. The last thing, I think there were a couple of things. Check what I haven't had a sheet to go through. Add-ins, I definitely wanted to briefly talk about. We will go through these in a separate session, but these are a way to add additional functionality to your submission flow. So this includes things like email notifications that you can set up to automatically go out after a submission is made. This is also where you'll configure things like payment. This is where we'll have review pages and we can redirect to an external website after a submission is made. If we want to do redirect to our County of Demo main website, we could do that. We could also add CAPTCHA. We can also interact with data sources, a variety of different options. Like I said, we'll go through this in a separate session that we'll have that'll be recorded, but this is a way to add in additional functionality to those forms. And then one thing that I also wanted to mention as well is versioning and cloning, because I know that is often a point of confusion for people when they're building forms. Versioning can be a little more confusing of a feature, and I actually would say that more often than not, I actually don't recommend using the versioning feature with an engagement builder. There are very particular use cases where it may make sense, but for the vast majority of users, cloning the engagement would actually make more sense. But if you were looking at using the versioning, that is available here. So let's say I wanted to create a new version of the Contact Us form here. On the right side, I could click the drop down and click Add Version. And now I can go ahead and say this is the Contact Us 2 form or whatever that might be. You can go ahead and create that. What this will do, and I'm going to go ahead and back up this screen really quick, is it will create a completely separate version of that is kind of within this nested folder structure. And what's a little confusing is both of these can actually be published at the same time simultaneously, even though they're different versions of the same engagement. And the confusion that can lead to is, let's say that I go ahead and make all the modifications to this Contact Us 2 version. I go ahead and publish that. But I want users to, now use this Contact Us 2 page. I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. Let's see if I can get that up. I might not have had any content to it, which is why it doesn't like it. Let me see. Let me actually do the main Contact Us one. Perfect. So as you can see here, these are both able to be published at the same time. Versioning doesn't really mean that this is the newest version of it and this is the only one that can be used. They're completely separate of one another, and they just kind of exist within this versioning folder structure, so to speak. For that reason, what I typically recommend when it comes to creating a new version of an engagement, or a cloned version of it rather, I would actually click New Engagement at the top right here, and then click Clone Engagement. And from there, you can go ahead and select whichever form you're looking to copy, maybe request record here as an example, and it will create a completely new independent engagement that's completely separate from the other one, that's not attached to it in any way. This, technically, yes, they could still both be published at any time, but that way it doesn't exist within this folder structure that's a little hard to get rid of and kind of adds more confusion than it resolves. And when it comes to versioning, just as you're making changes to the engagement itself, typically the history tab will suffice for that anyway, where you'll just be able to see every change that has occurred over time, revert back to previous versions, and take a look at your messages or your notes to know exactly what change occurred in it. Cool. The last thing that we really just wanted to quickly touch on is user management. So just make sure that whenever you provide privileges to any internal admins to be able to edit engagements, they will need the 4 privileges that we see here at the top of user roles. One of the common points of confusion that we see is that people will only provide the admin privilege with nothing underneath. And unfortunately, that only provides a very, very small ability into actually managing those forms. You'll actually want to look at including page editor, power editor add-on, and publisher add-on in order to be able to do everything you expect from it. Cool. I think that is it for the demonstration for today. Like I said, it was just very much a high level of building forms and all the features and functionality around that. The next session that we will be working on, I'm going to switch over here, is the add-ins piece of that. So if exactly what I mentioned today, we didn't touch on add-ins very much because we're intending to go through it in next month's session. So we'll go through all of the capabilities with the various add-ins that you can put onto your forms and engagements. September, we're going to go through workflows and best practices around those. And then October is when we're going to dive into calculations and more dynamic logic. We'll touch back on things like conditional regions and other ways that you can use calculations within your forms. All of that fun stuff. Cool. I think without further ado, we're ready to go and do a Q&A.